Is Erin? Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Some technical issues, but yeah. So thank you, Erin, for that introduction, and also Rachel and Sarah. So I asked everybody to add in the chat, like, describe SEL in one word, and I saw emotions, I saw interesting, I saw compassion, all those words that describe SEL. And thank you very much to all of you who actually went and comment. I cannot see the comments right now because this is a new webinar, but thank you all who commented in the chat. So all those words, as we were mentioned, does describe SEL. And so the first questions to start this discussion is, what makes social emotional learning so important in the educational landscape today? And let's start with Erin.
I think one of the most important things is making sure students are ready for life beyond high school. And one of the things working in high school and with the community colleges and different career pathways is hearing the lack of soft skills, and how people are not ready for things like time management and just being able to communicate with different employers. And so I think there are many pieces of the SEL curriculum that really help to prepare our students for life beyond high school. So I think for that reason, along with the increase of mental health issues, I think there's so many reasons that we need to really focus in on supporting our students at all levels so they're ready for life beyond high school.
Love that. And so Rachel.
Yes, I love what you're saying as well about the soft skills. Something that comes to mind to me is regarding mental health, and how, according to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we know that students aren't going to be able to learn academically until their social emotional needs are met. So I think it's so important that we do these preventative class-wide lessons on social emotional skills. That way our students can feel ready to learn and engaged academically, because think of yourself, like if you're trying to learn something new, but you're distracted because you're having a conflict with someone or a self-esteem issue, or if you're feeling really anxious about something, it's difficult to focus. So I feel like it's a necessary preventative measure.
True. And Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, I agree with everything you guys have said so far. I think that also, I think of things in very big picture, like when I think about a lot of the problems that so I know a lot of people are international, but here in the US and internationally as well, a lot of the major problems we are confronting as people, as nations, are related to big emotions that people don't know how to manage. And then also critical thinking skills. So I think that SEL is very important just for teaching kids those basic skills. And oftentimes kids will tell me, man, my grownups need these too. Like I'm gonna teach my grownups these coping skills. And I'm like, good. So it's things everyone needs, right?
Yeah, love that. So Sarah, can you tell us what are the pillars of social emotional learning, and what aspects of the students are we trying to reach?
Yeah, so I think that question is kind of difficult, because I feel like social emotional learning and it touches just every aspect of everyone's lives. Even if you're in math class, you're still going to need to learn how to work with each other and to communicate. So I think that making sure that we are incorporating those soft skills into every subject we're teaching, even if it's something that you wouldn't necessarily be teaching those soft skills in naturally. like math or like a STEM field versus social studies or history or ELA, where those are kind of woven into the curriculum a little bit more. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's kind of where I think we should be going with SEL, and I think we are.
Yeah, true. So Erin, can you add to that?
Yes. So to add to that, I think some of the pillars, for example, relationship skills, when we're working in classrooms, a lot of times we're working in groups or pairs, and we need to be able to have those skills to communicate and work together in ways where, we're not fighting. We're able to get through a project in a way where we're being productive and successful, and understanding things like you're not always going to like the people you're with. Someone may work harder than others, and they're real skills that we're going to be seeing in the workforce. And things like self-control and self-awareness, it's really important to be able to know yourself and understand where your strengths are, where your challenges are. So I think those things, even though we sometimes think of SEL as a counseling area, it's about looking at how those skills are really things that are just everyday life skills that we all have learned on our own or just in life in other ways. But now we're just focusing in through a counselor, but it's really classroom skills that are used every day. It's just looking at it from a different lens.
Yeah. And now that you mentioned that, Rachel, can you tell us how can an educator incorporate SEL into like the everyday classroom curriculum?
Yeah, so one of my favorite things that I like to help teachers do is do a simple morning meeting. So a lot of teachers are already doing this, but just adding an SEL component to it. So you could make like a circle chat and just have some simple discussion cards and a talking piece. I like to hang up a feelings poster and just have the students do that self-awareness and self-management piece, because I think that is something we all struggle with, right? So just getting the kids to be able to identify, this is how I'm feeling and why. So the teacher can simply model that and everyone can have a turn. And then you can maybe, learn like a different coping skill or something each day as well. I think that's something you could do in like 15 minutes or less, depending on class size. And it's just like a fun, positive way to start the day.
True. Yep, Sarah, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think just as Rachel was saying, that I would suggest starting off the day, if your schedule allows, hopefully it does, because I think it's really important to start the day with a morning meeting or some kind of other ritual that is involving explaining how you're feeling. That could be very simple. I mean, even in thinking about how to apply these different things to a high school setting, perhaps where you're switching class periods more often, you could have something simple like as you walk in the door, you mark on a board how you're feeling that day, like something like that, just to let people know that feelings are, as Mr. Rogers says, mentionable and manageable. That is the important thing that we're trying to convey to everyone at every grade level, because we socialize kids differently, and I've noticed a lot of boys, even at the elementary school level, are encouraged to keep their feelings inside, and we know that causes problems. So we want to let people know that things are mentionable. And once we mention them, we can work together to come up with solutions to figure out how to deal with these feelings. So I think that a morning meeting or some kind of ritual, walking in the door, sharing something basic about your feelings, or you can pass if you don't want to share as well. If you don't feel comfortable being vulnerable with a class at that point, that's okay too. I think that's very helpful to have some kind of ritual in the morning.
Yeah, thank you for that. I actually use that in my therapy section. I use boom cards, and that also collects the data, so I can see how the student is doing day by day based on that data also. So I know we'll be sharing our screens later on to share those boom cards. So let's continue with this. And so right, Erin, can you add more to that if you have any other idea how can an educator incorporate SEL?
Just to add on, I mean, everything they said, I agree with completely. One other thing that I like is adding a reflection. So maybe at the end of the class, just reflecting on what was learned, reflecting on maybe a high and low of whether it's the day or the period, depending what level. Getting used to not just looking at maybe the negative of what didn't go well, but what went well. What was your favorite part of the day? I think it's so easy for us just as people to focus in on what did not go well that day. And so training yourself to just think of, but what did go well? What was the best part? And it's okay to think about what didn't go well, but just to try to start looking at both sides. And so I find that really helpful. And then even just building into the day, maybe, or even weekly, a new mindfulness or stress management technique. I think in introducing any sort of stress management tool into a student's life is good. I think what works for one might not work for the other. So having different ones roll through the classroom is kind of a nice way to help students see how they can self-regulate.
True. I love that. So let's go with Rachel. And I know we've been talking about this, but how does focusing on SEL contribute to learning?
Yes. So like I was kind of saying in my example earlier, I feel that you need to take care of those social emotional needs before you're able to learn, whether that's, specifically, I think of self-regulation, right? So I primarily work with elementary students. So these kiddos get in a heightened state and they're only thinking with their like amygdala, right? Their like prefrontal cortex is not engaged. There's no way they're going to be able to do math or something. And so often, and I find myself doing this with my son too, you're trying to like move forward and like explain something rationally, but they're not there yet because they're still in that, heightened state. So I think it's so important to realize that nothing is going to be productive until we, handle that. And I love SEL as like a school-wide approach or preventative, classroom lesson approach, because that way we can teach students the skills they need before they get to that heightened state, because it's really hard to teach a coping skill when you're already upset, but if you've already been practicing your deep breaths with your class every day, then when you are in that state, your teacher can say, oh, hey, remember that skill we worked on. And then hopefully, they're able to remember it.
Yeah, and that example specifically is one that I always teach, like practice your breathing before you need that, because it could be like you can think it's easy. Oh, it's easy to breathe, but deep breathing, it is super difficult, and especially when you need it. So that is super good to know. Yeah, that's a great tip. So Sarah, how is social emotional learning or wellness different from counseling and mental health? Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you are asked this question, because I feel like a lot of educators who are not school counselors specifically often wonder about this. Sometimes we have teachers that are like, why should I be doing this in my classroom? You're the school counselor. You should be coming in and discussing feelings with my students. I don't have to do that. I mean, most teachers are not like that, of course, but you get some people that are often wondering this. So yeah. So I try to explain to teachers and to students as well that SEL is the foundation. That's the tier 1 intervention, for those of you who think in those tier systems. That's the intervention for everyone at school. Like everyone is getting some basic skills training for coping skills. Everyone should be getting some basic relationship skills training, all of those things. And then for students who are really struggling, who need a higher level of support, then you can be referred to a school counselor to be seen however often the counselor is able to, whatever the plan is for that student, a small group or individual. So that's a higher level of need. So everybody at school should be hopefully receiving some social emotional learning skills and support.
Yep, I agree. So Erin, how important is it for teachers to model a high standard of social emotional wellness?
I think it's really important. And I think that's really how students learn that behavior is for everyone. It's setting that value system and showing that it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay for, as adults, for example, if a teacher misspells something on the board, which this has happened to me myself a few times, and we make a mistake, it's okay to be like, you know what, that's right, I made a mistake and I'm apologizing for it. That way a student feels more safe to have that same experience. I think it's hard for some people to feel okay about being human in that moment. And it's actually the best thing they can do, is have that human moment with the student and apologize and show the empathy, show the kindness, and even just reminding themselves by doing those little pieces, they're showing students how to behave and how they should show other people. So I think it's very important, because if they're not being kind to others, then they're going to pick up on that and they're going to display that as their norm. So I think all those moments count, and the more a teacher can model behavior for students, the better they can do as teachers for not just what they're teaching content wise, but behavior wise.
True. And I totally agree. And so when I was doing my practice as a school psychologist, practitioner or student, so in my center, we use the floor time method. And so with that, we did like a profile for the therapist and for the student or patient. And we do like a profile of how we're feeling, so we can like self-regulate and then go to therapy, and we both can be like regulated or help each other. So yeah, I totally agree with that. And we have a comment from Kellyanne saying, many teachers need to learn SEL as well, and teaching it daily allows us to practice what we preach. And yes, totally agree, Kellyanne. So thank you for that comment. And so let's see, what else do we have? So what is your favorite SEL topic to teach about? So Rachel, go ahead.
Oh, this one's so tricky. I think for me, it is self-regulation. So, emotional regulation, students becoming first aware of how they're feeling. So again, at the elementary level, I love to talk about, like our bodies, like physically, how does that emotion manifest in your body? So if you're angry, maybe your face is hot, or your fists are clenched, or your stomach hurts, just having the students be able to identify, oh, that's what this feels like. And then once you identify that, which coping strategy can we choose? So I love to introduce a lot of different coping strategies, have like calm down corners, help teachers set that up if they're interested, and just get some things in place school-wide, so everyone can kind of have a common language of what to do. Because so often as school counselors, we do something in our office and it's great, but it's like a little bubble, and we need them to generalize that skill, right? So we need the students to do that in the classroom or in the cafeteria or in the front office, or at recess. Like, things happen all over campus, not just in our office. So I love using self-regulation and getting like a common language, like for example, zones of regulation is great, something to get the whole staff on board. So if something happens at recess, like a recess duty person will know, which zone are you in, and like, here's some coping strategies. So I think self-regulation is my favorite.
Love that. So Sarah.
My gosh, there's so many different things that are SEL related. But this is just kind of a personal thing for me that is really important to me. And I think is overlooked, especially at the elementary level, is discussing consent and like body boundaries. I've had to deal with that a lot at my schools, and I just think that it's really important to discuss like that it's your body. It's okay to like say no, I don't really want to hug right now. No, I don't really want to kiss from my grandma. You know, to own your body as a young person. Because often we kind of overlook that as adults, but it is really easy to teach kids that, even at an elementary level. So that's something that's just personally important to me. But yeah, as Rachel was saying, I really do enjoy teaching self-regulation as well. And just a lot of those relationship skills, conversation skills are very fun to teach too. Because you know, get to have a conversation, and get to know students better and teach them how to pause and listen, which is a struggle, but really fun when they start to get it.
Yes. And Erin.
It's definitely a hard question. I would say in the high school setting where I'm at, for me, it would be the stress management topic, mostly because I see how debilitating it can get, especially when we're looking at college applications or test taking and all of that. And just finding the right skills for students can really be a game changer for how they feel in their environment. So I think for me, it's just seeing that change. It really helps. So stress management would probably be my favorite topic.
Not bad. So now that you have shared your favorite topic, how can you use boom cards to teach SEL or those topics? So anyone can start.
Well, for me, I know with stress management, I've got a few different boom cards that I've developed. For me, I've made a couple different levels for different grade levels of groups that are in different units. So whether it's trying to identify skills, whether it's about journaling or techniques or identifying feelings, all sorts of different topics, but it's really to help identify those triggers and work through those stressors. And I think I've found it successful, whether it's students doing it individually or in a classroom, in different environments. But I think the thing that I like most about the boom cards is the adaptability of it and how it can really be changed to help students where their needs are and the environment where they may need it.
Perfect. Thank you, Erin. So Rachel, and you guys can go ahead and share your screen if you want to show any deck.
Yes, so I was pulling up one right now. This one is for self-regulation. So let's see, and it may have some sound too. So this one is teaching self-regulation in the like example of a thermometer, getting from hot, warm, cold, and cool, and how to cool down. And so how I have the students, first I just kind of, introduce the concept, and I would project this on the screen like during a class lesson. So I would be, talking about it and asking them to share examples during this part. And then, and this has audio, just asking the same question.
Who is in the blue zone? Select the best two choices, then use the arrows to navigate.
So who's in the blue zone or who's showing a cold type emotion? And then the students, so what I like to do, if you do it virtually, you would just have them click it or ask them which one, and you could click it if you're projecting. But if you're in person, I like to get the kids up and moving. So if this is projected on the screen, you would say, who wants to come up and, tap one, and then have the kids jump up and tap one, make it physical and fun. They could even like act it out alongside. There's like a lot of ways you could get creative with it, but I have the indicator, the little thermometer down there showing them the different options. So, like a cold emotion would be this one or this one. And then I love the boom cards because, as you know, they're like self-grading. So for example, let's say that they get one of these, like they click this one, and we're like, nope, that's not right. That one would be more of a hot emotion because you can tell, by their fist and their teeth that they're really angry. So we're looking for someone who's just more warm. So maybe this person is acting silly. And we can see that's one of them, but then there's some other options too. So that's kind of an example of how I use my boom cards when it comes to self-regulation.
Love that. Thank you for sharing your screen and showing your amazing deck. It looks great. And so Steph.
Sure. Let me share real quick. Okay. So I only have oh, is it working?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. Yeah, so I only have a few sets of boom cards that I've created, but this is one that I have used a lot lately. So how big is the problem? Man, I have a lot of kids who are, freaking out about something that's real small lately. So my students, I typically use this also in a classroom lesson setting. Although I have used it individually with students as well, just kind of going through some scenarios, explaining, what is a small problem, what's a medium problem, what's a big problem, and how to identify those. So there's a little bit of a lesson section first, and then let's practice. I've incorporated sound as well. And you can click the buttons to, hear the question read aloud. I also have an idea about how could you solve it. So you accidentally break your pencil. That's a pretty easy one to solve. Let's see. That's a big problem. No, it's not. It's small. Your friend is mad at you and you don't know why. That's a little more complicated. Because you could use an adult's help for that, but you should probably try first to figure it out yourself, right? So that's a medium problem. And then there's ideas about how you could solve the problem.
If your friend is mad at you, the first step would be to ask them why they are mad. Once you figure out why they're mad, then hopefully you can solve the problem yourself. If you try to solve the problem but still need help, then you can ask a grown-up to help you.
So one thing I also like about boom cards, because I do utilize other creators' boom cards a lot as well, is, for example, if there are too many questions on here, I can go through and hide cards as well, hide slides in the boom cards that I'm using, so that we don't have to go through every single one, or if there's a example or question that's not really relevant, like if you, for example, don't have, if your kids don't bring snack to school or something, and I think there's a question about snack in here, then you can get rid of that question. So I really like the flexibility of boom cards and using them in that way. In any different setting, really. Like I said, I really like to use them one-on-one as well with students to discuss some of these issues and teach some of these skills.
Love that. And I think that is another super important topic. So thank you for sharing that. And so this will be like our last question before moving over to the Q&A. So what is a good tip for general education teachers when teaching SEL to students? So Erin, why don't you go ahead and start?
I think, don't be intimidated. And, there's a lot of tools out there, and, I've like for my curriculum, I've tried to think of what can I do to make it this easy for anyone to just take it and implement it. So, and I apologize, I forgot to share my screen. So I put together a lot of different slides that have all the lessons, that have the lesson and the activity and the reflection. So all of it is built in. So that way it doesn't matter who is taking this curriculum, they just have to get it to the student, and the student is going to learn from that unit, and they're going to enjoy it. They're going to have fun. And it's intimidating, I think, when somebody hears they have to teach social emotional learning, and they feel like they may have missed some training. But I know that, like, for example, my friend who teaches AP chemistry in a high school has taken my feelings chart that looks like it's for an elementary school kid, and she has her chemistry students do it every morning, and they love it. They get excited, and if they don't have it, they wonder why. Because students are engaged. They want something fun, you know, they want to be engaged in the classroom. And I think sometimes teachers may feel intimidated by that, but I think just have fun with it and use what's already out there.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that, Erin. So now let's go over to some of the questions from the attendees. So first we have Gloria asking, I teach virtually with students with special needs. Any ideas for this group of students?
I'll just hop in. I mean, that's a difficult question, I think, because it's so broad. You know, as school counselors, well, and as educators in general, we all work with so many different students with different disabilities. So it obviously depends on the student's grade level, developmental level, and all of those different things. But I think that a lot of the things that we suggest just for any classroom would be applicable as well. Starting off, like having a very secure routine that students can depend on and know, like, okay, the first thing when I come in, my teacher is going to ask me, say good morning and ask me, how are you feeling today? And they know how to do that. They know that that's coming, and that they can share those feelings. And I think like just doing things to make sure that the class feels comfortable with one another and safe, and that this is just a very safe environment to share your feelings, to ask questions if you're confused about something. All of those things I think are applicable to any classroom, but especially extra important with students in a special ed classroom.
True. Thank you. Anyone else want to answer?
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that Sarah just said. I think it's really depending on where the need is that you're trying to address. I think a lot of the curriculum that, you know, I think all of us have made, it's really adaptable and it's easy to use. I think the Boom platform is really user-friendly for all students. And I think having that routine and you know, doing the same thing is really helpful for students, because then they know exactly this is what we do. This is the norm. And having that data can be really useful too for students, especially when you're looking at special education, when you need that data to support your IEPs and 504 plans. It can be really helpful when you're looking at growth as well. So I think a lot of the Boom materials can be really helpful for that as well.
Thank you. Rachel, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. Just to piggyback off what Erin was saying, I think the Boom cards are great for special needs students because, you know, very visual, interactive, and there is the audio aspect. So just, you know, finding ones or creating ones that you think, you know, with your students in mind. And something else I always like to do is, and this is kind of like the previous question talking about making teachers feel comfortable doing SEL, even if they're, you know, not typically there. Is I love to personalize it to the student you're working with. So in this case, to the special education student. So I love to like make up my own social stories or anything using that student and their strengths. And kind of like Sarah was saying, you can omit certain cards from the deck if they don't reflect, you know, your classroom or your students. I think that's important to kind of customize it for your specific kids in mind.
True. And I was going to add that that's specifically what you said, something that I've worked with my students and patients, and that it always worked, is the social stories. And it's because they teach the topic or what you want to teach them, but not like directly. So they can kind of like, I don't know, like, oh, that's kind of me. And so that's something I always love using. I always love creating social stories, and it always work. And for example, I want to pull up a deck just to show you really quick something I did for my students. And I think I'm sharing my entire screen. But here is one that I created for, so I live in Puerto Rico. We have a lot of hurricanes here, as you may know. So I created like this social stories for my student with autism or my autistic students. And these are all images created by my cousin who is autistic. And so this teach them like the process that they went through and all we went through. And so it teach them like, oh, this is what happened. There was a blackout and kind of that stuff and what happened. And then I add them, like, I show them that the mother was breathing and doing this deep breathing. And I add that here, and they can do like the box breathing, for example. So that is something that always work. Like Rachel said, those social stories always work. So that's a tip for you all. And it can work virtually or in person. So let's say any book recommendation for teaching emotions and how they manifest in the body. Thanks. That's from Julia.
I was just actually looking at this book earlier. There are a lot of great books that I have found, but I like Listening with the Heart by Gabby Garcia. That is specifically talking about like being hard on yourself and being nervous and kind of how that manifests. I also like it's called Do Superheroes. I don't know. I have to find it. Hold on, someone else share. There's so many good books about feeling.
So either Rachel or Erin, do you have any books recommendation for emotions?
I'm blanking on mine. I love Julia Cook. I really like all of her books. I would recommend those.
I have one that I use with my patients this year, and they all loved it. And we actually have boom cards that are book companion for that. And I think in English is The Color Monster. And they do sell that in like Amazon or something. And they even came with those like, I don't know, like dolls or something, like toys that you can teach them the emotion with colors and how they feel it and where they feel it and that kind of stuff. And it's kind of like a social story. So that's why I love it. And so we actually have book companions in boom cards. So you can read the book and then have the boom cards as a companion to that. So that's one for emotion, just in case.
Okay. I found the two that I was thinking of. So I have one that I like, especially for the little kids, called The Grouchies. And it is by, let me share my screen. You can see the picture real quick.
Monster Feelings, just Jennifer put it in the chat. Thank you, Jennifer.
So The Grouchies by Debbie Wagenbach. I like this one because it is discussing, you know, a kid feeling grumpy. And then his parents teach him some coping skills and discuss how they can deal with those grouchy feelings and turn them to happy feelings. And then we also have Do Superheroes Have Bad Days? And I like that for like grades 2 through 5. And that is also a similar kind of deal. But it's just talking about superheroes and that they have bad days as well. And they could kick or scream or destroy whole towns if they want to, but they don't do that. They like go for a bike ride, or they take deep breaths, or they meditate. They do those things. So those would be my favorites.
Love that. So they teach like a lot of coping skills.
I'll put them in the chat too.
Okay, so we have one more question because we have like 4 minutes. So Julia is asking, are there any tips on teaching parents the importance of SEL strategies?
Yeah, I love to do a newsletter. So I think that's an easy way. You could do it virtually too, so you don't even have to print anything. Or if your school already does a newsletter, you could, incorporate it with that or like add it onto your school website. But just like some basic strategies, you could even try to do like an SEL skill of the month. Maybe it's something that's mirroring your class lessons anyways, or, and I would just make it really simple and doable for parents. The fact that parents are interested is awesome, but you don't want to discourage them by, overwhelm. So just giving them some simple strategies like the box breathing, visual that you showed earlier, something as simple as that, like practice this with your child. I think that's a good idea, is doing a newsletter is an easy way.
Thank you for sharing that. Oh, Erin, were you going to say something?
I was just going to add to that. I find the newsletter very effective, and especially with having tips. And some students will, I found personally, reach out and ask once they see that you're giving that information. It allows them that kind of safe, I guess, environment, so they feel comfortable asking when they have questions about specific topics.
Thank you for that. So yeah, we have 3 minutes. So I'm seeing Ali asked, does anyone have products for lower functioning students in special education? So we'll be sharing your stores within the chat. So anyone can go there and just look at their stores. They all have amazing products, amazing boom cards, and they're interactive. So you can use them for virtual therapy or class, for in-person, for everything. And so yeah, for special education, I'm seeing how could you tie it into life skill classes. So I know we'll be having a section about for special education, so you can join us in those future. I think it is tomorrow, the special education, or on Wednesday. So make sure to check all of our sections. For this one, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Rachel, Sarah, and Erin, for joining us. You're all amazing school counselors. And if you don't follow them, go ahead and follow them all. They're amazing. They always share really good content for you all. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you in our next section in 10 minutes. So thank you all.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.